Professor, while this ruling only applies to the state of Colorado, still it is hugely significant. Perhaps you can explain why.
Yes, this relies on a part of the federal Constitution that says no one can run for an office of the United States if they have engaged in insurrection. It's from the old Civil War, and this is the first time in U.S. history that any federal official has been disqualified from office or eligibility for office based on this provision. The Supreme Court of Colorado held that Donald Trump had engaged in insurrection, and therefore, no matter what anyone thinks, he would be ineligible to be on the ballot in Colorado. It could be in a number of states as well.
So let me understand this. This has to do with the GOP primary in March. Am I correct?
Yes. And there are requirements to be president. You have to be 35 years old. You have to be born in the United States. You have to live in the United States for a particular amount of time. And Colorado held just like those requirements when you check the state forms. You also have to be eligible for not having engaged in insurrection. And so they enforced that provision for the primary, for the GOP primary. They said Donald Trump is not eligible to be an elected president, just as if he hadn't met the age requirement or the U.S. citizenship requirement.
So many questions for you, Craig. What can we expect from this conservative majority Supreme Court when it comes to the appeals process? And will they, if they decide to take up this case, will they do it in a timely fashion before that March date for the Colorado primary?
Even more than that, the deadline set by the Colorado Supreme Court is January 4th, because that is a provision in state law when the ballots have to be printed and processed and formally distributed for the primary. So the Supreme Court of the United States, I think you should expect some kind of action by January 4th, if only to signal that they need more time to hear the case. They almost certainly will hear the case. This is a matter of grave national federal importance, just the kind of question the U.S. Supreme Court should hear. And of course, you're right that the justices who will hear it, 6 of them are very conservative. I think Trump can expect a pretty favorable hearing on these questions.
Wow. And does this, I guess the bigger question is, does it perhaps set a precedent for other states to follow and do something similar?
Yes, other states had already considered this question, at least 2 or 3, and they had reached a very different conclusion. I think, if anything, this Colorado opinion opens the door for other state Supreme Courts using their own requirements for primary ballots. They could reach a similar conclusion, at least until the U.S. Supreme Court rules.
Craig, you and I have talked about this a number of times. In fact, when Donald Trump was indicted for a 4th time, you were on the air with me. 2 impeachments, 4 criminal cases, and yet somehow Donald Trump plays victim every time and capitalizes on these legal setbacks. In fact, his favorable rating goes up among his supporters. So I guess my question to you is, at the end of the day, will any of this make a difference when it comes for him running in the presidential election in November of next year?
No, I think you're right. Time and again, Trump's reaction to losing in any tribunal, an election, a court, whatever, is to attack the institution and claim that everything's rigged. I think in the end, probably the U.S. Supreme Court will not allow a legal ruling like this to disqualify Trump in the end. It will be up to American voters. I think they are the only ones who will hold him ultimately responsible or not, hold him accountable or not, for the things that are increasingly clear that he has done to damage American democracy on January 6th and otherwise.
And I got to ask you about Trump's rivals, if you want to call them, the GOP contenders, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, coming to Donald Trump's defense. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult position for them. They are running in the same GOP voter base as Trump. They can't win without beating Trump, and they can't attack Trump without alienating the base. They're in a pretty impossible position. I think they have almost no chance. The one poll I saw recently doesn't relate to this question, but 25% of Trump voters, I think, were polled to say they would not support him if he were convicted. Now, that, again, all these timeframes are way too late. And so I think there is very, very, very high probability that Trump indeed will be the GOP candidate, and he will run again against Joe Biden, the current president.
Wow. All right. We'll have to leave it there. Professor Craig Green, thank you